Hi, Nick. Thank you for joining us.
Hello, Rachel. How are you?
I'm okay. I'm okay now. Thank you for joining Black Ink Cinema podcast. Before we get into it, we just want to know a little bit about Nick, all killer and some filler.
Yeah.
Talk to me about your career and where you got started.
I'm a stand-up comedian. Am I? Yeah, I suppose I still am. It's weird because of lockdown. I did a couple of gigs at the beginning of lockdown over Zoom, and I did. How was it? Horrible. I didn't enjoy it at all.
Oh,
and then I did a gig last night, and they said do as long as you like, and I ended up doing an hour, and I was like, oh, it's fine. Actually, it's fine. So yeah, I started doing stand-up in 2006. So I started writing plays when I was at uni and taking them out to Edinburgh, and no one ever came to see them. And then I did that for years. And then I spent years and years writing a play called Stroke.
Sounds a bit dark.
It was really dark. But we got a 1-star review in the Scotsman in 2006 and in August, and then in September I started doing stand-up, and I realised, well, it wasn't technically a 1-star review. It's a 2-star review, but it printed out as a 1-star review. And if you can spend like 7 years writing a play and getting 1-star reviews, then you can sort of like write a bit of stand-up on a bus and see if it's funny or not. So then I still wrote theatre for a little bit, and then I got into stand-up, and then through stand-up I started doing, I think I did Russell Howard in 2010, the show, and then I think in 2011 or 2012 I started working with Baby Cow, and then they put me in Uncle.
Yes, which I really enjoyed, by the way. Love the relationship between you and Errol.
It's sweet. It's really sweet. It's dark. It's sweet. Yeah. And I think that's why I liked it. If it was just relentlessly dark, but I like it. I like things that are sort of covertly positive.
Yes, exactly.
Not something that's just sort of like ramming good vibes down your throat, but something that's sort of like you have to muddle through it, and then eventually you feel good about yourself. So I was really lucky with that.
Do you have anyone in particular that inspired you to get into comedy or writing?
Comedy was a little bit weird because I had heroes when I was growing up, but I never really considered stand-up as like it never even occurred to me that you could do stand-up.
Yeah.
It's always, I think it's one of those things where you watch other people do it, and then you just always assume it's something that other people do. And then, but what am I going to do? Yeah. So it never occurred to me that I grew up watching people like Jack Dee, Joe Brand, Stuart Lee, Richard Herring, and then Harry Hill. But like when I was really little, I used to watch TV with my mum. So we used to watch French and Saunders, Jasper Carrot, Victoria Wood, and so it's sort of like I grew up with all of that stuff. And then I grew up sort of like in video shops where your parents would take you to a video shop on Friday or Saturday night, and so I just used to just rent out Steve Martin videos every week.
Oh yeah, classic.
And that's sort of like, so those are all like my comedy heroes, but I don't think I really do anything that's much like them. I think that they're not really influences, they're just people that, make me laugh. But it never occurred to me that it was a thing that you could do. I've just grown up knowing stuff about film actors, and because I just grew up reading Empire magazine and Total Film, and watching films and reading about films and just being obsessed with films. So you kind of like, and also I studied like Brecht and Stanislavski at school. And so it's one of those things where rather than acting and trying to sort of like imagine what it would be like if you were depressed, you just sort of like remember a time when you were depressed, and then you keep that in your head while you're doing the scene, and you sort of let that take care of itself. So you're not sort of using up energy creating something. You're kind of just channeling. You're remembering an actual genuine emotion, and then you're sort of like channeling it. That's how I did it. But with mixed results sometimes. But it is what it is.
Cool. So you're currently hosting your own podcast, Fan Club.
Yes, Fan Club with Nathaniel McCall.
Yeah, where you geek out on popular culture. What's it about? Like, what about popular culture that you guys...
Well, to be fair, we wanted to do a film podcast, but they already had 2 film podcasts.
Right.
So we said we'll do it about popular culture.
Yes.
And then we just exclusively talked about films.
Sneaky. I like it.
Nobody realised until about a year later. And then it was just like, we've been doing it. We did our 100th episode this week together.
Oh, congratulations.
I didn't do one, so it's our 101st episode, but our 100th episode together. And and it took but we just talk about films. That's all we're really interested in. So
that's my life. That's all I'm interested in as well. Scrolling through your Instagram, I did see you with Nick and Nat's Film Club as well, about to watch Cool Runnings, and you had a bottle of Malibu. I thought that was a brilliant touch.
I drank a whole bottle of Malibu while we were watching it. Though. It was just at the beginning of lockdown, and we were trying to work out what to do. But we fucked it up because he was on Twitter and I was on a different. We weren't on the same thread.
Right. Oh no.
And we said that we'll watch Cool Runnings together. Basically, he watched it independently of me on his laptop at 7:30 or whenever we watched it, and I watched it on my laptop, and I just wrote. I did like a Twitter thread on my experience of watching Cool Runnings, and he did his as well. And I never read what he said, and we didn't interact with each other at all. We just messed it up. But and then we never did it ever again. We were going to do it every week, and we just couldn't be bothered. And it was just like,
it's like what, yeah.
I think at the beginning of lockdown, everyone was so like
lost.
Yeah, and frustrated, and just trying to work out. But also, as a comedian, comedians really. A lot of comedians really seem to want a lot of attention and a lot of limelight, and I realised quite early on that, do you know what? I'm all right just shutting up for 5 months. That's fine. That's absolutely fine. And now it's got to 6 months, and now it's just like, I'll do an hour. I'll do a gig, and I'll talk for an hour, and then that's that. But yeah.
So you're a musical man. You sing. You play the guitar. What's currently on your playlist?
What's on my playlist? I almost exclusively listen to Alice Cooper.
So have you got any music in the pipeline at the moment? I know you've already released 3 albums. Have you got anything?
I'm working on my 3rd studio album at the moment, and I'm working on a soundtrack album to a musical that I did in Edinburgh last year.
Cool.
But because lockdown, everything sort of like slowed down. So I'm just sort of like going, I'll do it when we're back.
Yeah, lockdown really got in the way. Where can people find you on the socials?
I'm at the Nick Helm on Twitter and at the Nick Helm, I guess, on Instagram. And I've got a blue tick on Instagram, but they won't let me have one.
Extremely verified.
Yeah, I've been verified. It took ages, but I finally got verified on Instagram.
So we're here to celebrate all things Black cinema, and you chose the latest edition in Eddie Murphy's catalogue of work, Dolemite Is My Name.
Yeah.
I think you're the first person to choose like a modern film, like a new film.
Oh, well, it came out last year, and I think it was either my favourite film or like my, it was either my first or my second favourite film. I can't imagine what my first favourite film was if it wasn't that. One of my favourite, I love Eddie Murphy.
Yeah, I was like, are you a fan? Growing up, were you a fan of his work?
Yeah, I mean, growing up, a lot of his films were films that I wasn't allowed to see because stuff like 48 Hours. I mean, there was so much swearing in his films. Even stuff like Beverly Hills Cop, I probably watched it when it came out on TV, but they used to show it at like 6 o'clock on Saturday night on BBC One. And,
how times have changed.
they just cut all of the swearing out and all of the violence out and everything. And so it's kind of like, in like the early 90s, there was kind of like films like Distinguished Gentleman and Boomerang.
Yeah.
And even Vampire in Brooklyn, which that's I mean that's like
finish what you were about to say.
Vampire in Brooklyn is a weird. I mean, it's like it's not a good film. It's simultaneous.
For me, I don't mind watching it because I don't think black cinema has explored vampires.
Sure.
I feel like that was the last time that happened.
I think, yeah, and I think that's valid. I don't think it's do you know what? It's a weird film. I wouldn't say that it is. It's Wes Craven, you know, and he made. It's like, what's Wes Craven? What was he trying to do? It's like, is he trying to make a vampire comedy? And it was like Eddie Murphy was at that stage where
a comedy. Surely it was a comedy. I definitely remember laughing.
But Eddie Murphy was at that stage in his career when he wanted to be taken seriously, you know. And what was that film? In Metro, he made Metro, which was sort of like Beverly Hills Cop in San Francisco, but without any jokes. And there was no jokes in it. And you just like go, and I liked it, but it was kind of like, I mean, he's just so charismatic and so watchable. So I kind of like grew up on like the second tier Eddie Murphy films.
Okay.
All the way up to probably going to see The Nutty Professor at the cinema.
Yeah.
And then that being like the first Eddie Murphy film that I saw in the cinema. And I mean, I haven't seen that in a long time, but I think it's sort of like regarded as the beginning of him just wearing loads of makeup for everything. He did it a little bit in Coming to America. We did it. Yeah. He has like, what is it, 3 characters or 4 characters? He's got like three characters.
Yeah.
He's got 3 characters in Coming to America.
Yeah.
4 characters. He's the barber. He's the Jewish guy in the barber shop.
Yes.
He's the singer, and he's Eddie Murphy.
Himself. Yeah.
Yeah. So he started doing stuff like that, and then Nutty Professor was when he started really kind of like leaning into prosthetics and stuff.
Yeah. And so this was like his first biopic.
This one.
Yes.
Well, he did Dreamgirls. But
like him as like kind of the only lead.
Him as the lead.
Yeah.
Yeah. The thing is, sort of like, so my aside from, I really love Beverly Hills Cop. I kind of like Beverly Hills Cop 2, but...
Are we going to talk about Beverly Hills Cop 3? Because...
Well, Beverly Hills Cop 2, right, we talked about this on Fan Club this week, actually. So Beverly Hills Cop is sort of like one of them gritty, early 80s action comedies where it's still got like a foot in the 70s, where it's all sort of like gritty, and it's sort of it's a little bit like it's shot in not exactly the same way, but it's sort of like you can see influences from 70s films like The French Connection in it, right?
Yeah.
And then when you get to Beverly Hills Cop 2, it's all Simpson and Bruckheimer. Tony Scott directed it. So glossy, so slick, and it's almost like they've made an action film with comedy in it, but it's not really an action comedy.
Yeah.
And then you get to Beverly Hills Cop 3, which is... I mean, it's just... I mean, it's like... It's not really an action film. It's basically... It's not a very good comedy.
I mean, I'm just going to defend Beverly Hills Cop 3 here because, like you, I think that was the first film that I was officially allowed to watch when growing up. So I was still pretty young. So in my young days, I probably would have been like, oh my God, funfair. This is, the scene when he's climbing up the spider's wheel thing. I'm like, this is amazing. What a hero.
It. I loved it when I was little.
And watched 1 and 2, and I was like, oh.
How did they make that? Yeah.
I was like, okay, but it still holds a special place in my heart. I don't know if it's nostalgic but I quite enjoyed it. I don't think it's as bad as people say.
Anytime he's playing Axel Foley, and anytime he's anytime you hear that theme tune, and anytime he's wearing that sort of bomber jacket, it's like he's great, right? And when I was little, and I watched Beverly Hills Cop 3, it was clearly my favourite.
Yeah.
When you get older, I think there's one excellent Beverly Hills Cop film. There's one really glossy, quite an ugly, violent Beverly Hills Cop film, and then there's one which just sort of like misses. It's almost like he was trying to return to what made the first one good, but it sort of missed the mark a bit. Trading Places, I take that off TV, and I just watch that over and over and over again. And that's got some of my favourite comedy moments in it. I think that's great.
How do you feel about Beverly Hills Cop 4?
Do it. Just do it.
Okay.
Just do it. What are you waiting for? I mean,
I think it's in the pipeline. So
you should
I think he's going to do that and Coming to America too. So
well, he did a pilot for the TV series. He played Axel Foley, and he was basically handing the reins over to his son.
Oh no!
And I don't think it ever got aired. And you just like go, well, just make a Beverly Hills Cop 4 and stop going on about it and just do it. And then I just think, and then when you get to the end of the 90s, you get to Bowfinger. And I think that for a long time, Bowfinger was both Steve Martin and Eddie Murphy's last good film. I think it's so good. It's so clever. It's so funny.
And this one's a little bit similar like that in terms of...
Well, that's what I was going to say. It's like... when you watch this film, there's like two films that it reminds me of. One of them is Ed Wood, and one of them is Bowfinger.
Okay.
And I think it's better than both of them.
Is it because this one, Eddie's showing more his dramatic side, and so therefore do you prefer Eddie when he's kind of drawing in from more of the dramatics? Being a little bit more serious, because there was a lot of comedy in this, but it was quite like a serious...
Well, that's the thing. The other film that I was thinking about was Man on the Moon. Because with Man on the Moon, Jim Carrey attempts to do... I mean, I went out with someone whose favourite film was Man on the Moon, and I hate it, right? But the thing is, it's like Jim Carrey was trying to do an impression of Andy Kaufman. And when you actually put their performances side by side, Jim Carrey doesn't sound like him. He's got the wrong intonations. He's overselling every single Andy Kaufman joke. Andy Kaufman was sort of like did invisible comedy, and Jim Carrey sort of like signposts and everything. And it's weird because Jim Carrey was basically, he was trying to channel Andy Kaufman to do this, to create like this character in this film. And with Eddie Murphy, it's sort of like when you watch the original Dolemite, and you listen to the albums, and you see him sort of like do stand up. Eddie Murphy is not even attempting to do an impression. I mean, they're completely different. I mean, Eddie Murphy is basically doing Eddie Murphy, you know, and I think that we've missed that. He's so good. He's so good.
Yeah, I was saying, because obviously he's had a string of like kiddie films, and he was back swearing at his finest in this one. It was kind of like, you know, motherfucker Eddie's back. Did you like that?
I like Daddy Daycare though, so I'm all right.
Love Daddy Daycare.
And he did all the Shrek films as well, but I don't really count them. I feel like, you know, unless you can see him, it doesn't really count. But,
I mean, you heard him loud and clear, so we'll...
Yeah, you know. Sure. But I think so. He's using a lot of. It's Rudy Ray Moore.
Yeah,
was the guy, was Dolemite originally, and so he's sort of like being. The performance is really respectful in terms of the fact that he's wanted to make the film. They've created the film. It was written by the same people that wrote Ed Wood as well. Yeah. So it's kind of like. And he's kind of like, he's taken the essence of what he did and he's basically done it in a very Eddie Murphy way. And there are some really amazing scenes quite early on where he is kind of like doing full-on Eddie Murphy, and then he will switch and do something really sort of like emotionally emotionally connecting with the audience, you know, and you're kind of like, you know, he'll be doing something really broad and then he'll bring it down. And there's also something really interesting about seeing him this much older, you know.
Yeah, it was weird, I'm not going to lie.
He hasn't aged, I mean, he hasn't aged badly, but he is definitely older. And also he's wearing sort of like a wig where you can sort of like see through the wig a little bit, and he looks like he's balding in it. And and he looks like significantly older than, you know, I've seen like loads of interviews with Eddie Murphy on talk shows recently when he was doing like Saturday Night Live and stuff like that, and he looks younger than he does in this film. So they've kind of they've aged him.
Made him look a bit. Yeah, they probably have aged him a little bit.
But he's like 53 now, or he's like in his 50s.
Isn't he like 58?
Yeah, he'll be like, he's like almost 60 then.
Yeah, it's about 58.
But Rudy Ray Moore, he was in his early 40s when he was doing it. So it's kind of like, I mean, he was a lot younger than Eddie Murphy was when he did it. When he did the film. But he's sort of like, it's interesting because it's not an impression. So it's a really interesting performance because you assume that he's being kind of like, because I think it's also an Oscar-worthy performance. Yes,
it is, 100%. I agree with you with that.
I think really enjoyed it. I was gutted that he didn't win for Dreamgirls because
he was so good in that as well.
But it was the same year he made Norbit, so he was being punished.
We're not going to talk about Norbit.
Norbit, right? But so he made this film, and I think it's an Oscar-worthy performance, and it's everything that you kind of want, like in terms of a film. And it's a film about Hollywood.
Yes.
And the filmmaking process, which I love anyway.
Yeah, I thought that was really cool, and it kind of epitomizes the American dream. Do you like that aspect, or is that something that you're not a fan of?
Because when I said that it's a film about Hollywood, and it's not a film about Hollywood. It's a film about filmmaking, and it's a film about actually Hollywood not actually being there for a lot of people, and. But not only that, but like the blaxploitation industry didn't even back him.
Yeah,
it's literally. It was. I mean, what it's about is it's about a self-made man that believes in himself. Yeah. And I watched it. I watched it again yesterday. I cried. I cried.
I got so emotional.
Did you cry? Did you cry?
Yeah, I mean, there might have been one or two tears that trickled down because I just wasn't expecting it. Like, for some reason, it took me a while to watch it, and so when I did, it kind of threw me a little bit because I wasn't expecting that emotional connection. But I love a winner. Like, I like it when it all works out because films don't do that anymore. Like, films are just like everyone dies, tragedy happens, like, you know. It's just never happy. So like when it was an actual happy ending, I was like, oh,
it's such a feel good film. It's so good. But I didn't like cry. I think the first time I saw it around Christmas time, I cried, right? But I can't remember specifics. I remember yesterday. There's the bit when he's got to do the sex scene, and he's really worried about the sex scene, and then
what's that?
And then Queen Bee. Says to him, well, you know, you could just, and he goes, I could just make it funny. And I went, I know what it's like. I know what it's like being a big guy that has to do a scene in something that you don't want to do. And it's not only because I can directly relate to that exact scenario. It's the fact that it was it's like a guy that's sort of like, his whole act was, everyone took his act for who he... I guess I can relate a lot to it, but everyone takes his act at face value. That's what he's like. And he was nothing like that. There's that scene at the beginning where she's just been hit in the club, and he comes up to her afterwards, and they start talking at the bar. And, you know, you think that he's going to hit on her, or you think... And you think, you know, you think he's going to be slightly sleazy. And he's just... and they become like best friends, and he takes her with her on this amazing journey.
Two things I like about the fact that you were showing male insecurities and about his belly, and usually it's women in the films, or like it's not something that I've ever seen in a film. I've never seen them like a guy be like, oh, my belly or whatever, about to do a sex scene or anything like that. So that was really refreshing. And two, the relationship with him and her, Lady Reed, it was just, platonic. It was just kind of sisterly, which was nice because there was no romantic lead in this. And yet they had such a nice brother and sister relationship.
Yeah, quite an emotional film. And I think that relationship really sort of like, it takes you all the way through. I think it's a really beautiful film.
Had you heard of Dolemite or seen the original film before?
Like, only in sort of the vaguest way possible. And then I think when they announced that they were making the film, I didn't know really much about it. And then it started kind of like, YouTubing stuff and doing, because I've just got it, they're making a film and it's Eddie Murphy and there's an interest there. But it's weird because you sort of like, I watched like Stephen Colbert's interview with Eddie Murphy, and they're like saying, oh, it's very confusing for people, isn't it? Because there's Rudy Ray Moore and there's Dolemite, and it kind of like explain it. You go, well, what's confusing? It's a character. Yeah. Right? It's
not confusing at all. And even in the film, he kind of distinguishes that as well. And it's like, people think I'm this character and I'm not, and I'm this person. So I think it's I don't know who got confused. It wasn't that difficult.
I think that's like getting confused with Rowan Atkinson and Mr. Bean. Like the character. But I think that what he's saying is to the general audience, to people that, and he really is kind of like this underground superstar, right? And I think to the general audience, you go, what's Dolemite? Because Dolemite is an ongoing character that was on records, that was on stand-up shows, that he made films out of. And he was sort of like a folk legend that he kind of used in loads of other places. And then you got Rudy Ray Moore, who's the guy that did it all. So I think there might be, to the outside, it's just kind of like, well, who's Dolemite then? Is Dolemite the guy? And so I kind of get it. But then as soon as you look into it, so not even if you watch the film, you just go, oh, it's a comedy character that this guy's playing.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't find it hard at all. Some people may not know that ODB's Got Your Money video was made up of clips from Dolemite. And when I did find that out, when I watched the video, because I was like, makes sense now. That 70s flair, pimp look that they have going on.
Have you seen Dolemite?
The original?
Yeah.
No, I haven't.
I think I was watching it today.
Right.
Because I was doing kind of like research.
Yeah. Where did you watch it?
It's on Amazon.
Oh, okay. Is it? Do you have to pay for it? Because
it's on Amazon Prime.
But usually you have Amazon Prime and then they make you pay for videos.
I think you've got to pay for like the ones that he wasn't playing Dolemite on.
Okay.
But they've got that, and then they've got the sequel.
I'll check it out.
And because I've seen because the implication of the film is these films are absolute shit. You can see the boom mic, and people are walking into bits of set, and like it's basically like they've kind of done a blaxploitation version of Ed Wood, right? Yeah. And that's how they've done it, and it's really fun to watch people trying to make a film and get it wrong, and that's kind of like, it's an underdog story, isn't it? It's like they didn't know what they were doing, and they made this shit film, and beyond all kind of belief and all odds, it found an audience, and then they were a success. But when you watch the film, it's a perfectly watchable film. And I really liked it, and I probably preferred it to Shaft. It's kind of like, I know, right? The original. I think, but maybe it's because you've got the whole making of and you're expecting it to be absolute shit. But
then at the same time, when all films like that, like in the 70s and 80s, they're a little bit like, I watch them now and sometimes it's like, that's pretty crap, but I still enjoy it. It was just because of the time.
If they weren't like, Star Wars was made in the 70s. It's kind of
but Star Wars is in its own, like...
So, but I think if it wasn't like a studio picture, I mean, this is as independent as it gets, though. Do you know what I mean? It was he was doing gigs so that he could finish off filming it. Like there's this whole misconception about it. Well, it's not a misconception. You can see it, but basically the whole thing is that you can see the boom mic keep dropping into shot in the film.
Yeah.
And the thing is, it got released on the wrong aspect ratio, right?
Oh.
So then I think they did like a re-release where they kind of like put it in the correct aspect ratio. So there was like an uncut version which he had to edit so that it could get like a mainstream release, I think. Yeah. And then he lost all of the bits that he cut out. So there is no complete version of the film that exists anymore. There's even sort of like I was watching Dolemite earlier. There's even like a sex scene which literally he goes to kiss her, it cuts, and then it's the same shot, but they've finished having sex, and it's kind of like. But those bits of film are missing. But what they managed to do is they put the correct aspect ratio on, and so like all of that stuff about the boom coming into shot, that all of a sudden isn't so much a problem because it was showing as a square picture rather than kind of like a letterbox picture, and so when they do that, that's where they get rid of the boom mics and stuff. But I think that. The film is Dolemite Is My Name is a really wonderful kind of fictionalized account of this guy's life, and it's I think it's interesting because like in the 90s they got Ruby Ray Moore on Arsenio Hall, and there was kind of like Snoop Dogg was talking about like how he owes him his entire career.
I love that full circle then with the cameos. That was awesome. I wasn't expecting to see Snoop for 5 minutes.
When he showed up on it, and you've got all of these kind of like black artists that have been like championing for all this time, and it's sort of like he's never sort of like really kind of like broken into sort of and I don't know if he's broken into mainstream, but I do think that had it not been for the fact that Eddie Murphy had made a film about this guy, I wouldn't have gone back and watched it. I was listening to his albums, and they're amazing. Like
I was completely unaware of Dolemite, and Rudy Ray Moore's considered early hip hop. So is that where, with your musical background, is that why you picked Dolemite, because of the music as well as the acting?
That's not a huge aspect of the film.
Okay.
Yeah, my music really doesn't have a lot in common with that, but...
Oh, no, I wasn't saying
No, but but I know what you mean. But they don't really lean into it that much because it's about the making of the film, and he does rhyme in the film. Yeah. I mean, he rhymes all the way through the film. But when I was listening to the albums, it's kind of like you go, oh my God, he's like a really dirty Dr. Zeus, right? And then you look at all of these, I mean, like Andrew Dice Clay in the 80s, his basic whole act was doing dirty nursery rhymes. And you go, well, that's his act. So, and he was huge. He was doing like Madison Square Garden. Yeah. And he was like one of the biggest, he was, if not the biggest comedian on the planet at one time, Andrew Dice Clay. But then I guess with the film, it's kind of like he's playing, there's a guy who's got a persona. And I guess that if you were to analyse it, you could go, yeah, I can kind of relate to that. I mean, the other thing is that it's got Wesley Snipes in it.
Oh my God, who is literally my favourite thing in there?
I mean, I love Wesley Snipes.
I thought his performance was really refreshing and surprising, because I'm used to seeing Wesley hard, Blade, tough guy.
Yeah, I'm used to seeing Wesley hard. Yeah, I love that.
Not like that. But a hard man, demolition man, and stuff like that. And so to see him quite soft and silly.
He's brilliant. Well, he was in To Wong Fu, Thanks for Everything, Julie Newmar. Like, he's sort of like a little bit like... He's a little bit... bear with me. He's a little bit like Bruce Willis in that respect, where Bruce Willis started off as like a comedy actor, and then he sort of like ended up doing action films. Then every so often he'd do a film like Death Becomes Her, or Hudson Hawk, or something that wasn't really kind of like an action movie. And Wesley Snipes is sort of like was an actor who ended up kind of doing action movies. But before this, the last thing I saw him in was Expendables 3.
Yeah.
And then you see him in it, and you just like, he's obviously having so much fun. And it's such a good cast. Because obviously Wesley Snipes had all of that kind of like legal stuff with his taxes. And it feels like it's sort of like a comeback film.
Yeah.
I feel like Eddie Murphy did a load of family movies, and even like his last stab at doing kind of like an adult I think it was probably something like Tower Heist, where
did he do? Was it Mr.? There was that other drama.
He did a drama that kind of
it was like Mr. Churchill's. I don't know, Mr. Will something along those lines.
Yeah, it was a weird one. He wore like that little hat in it, and he went around. It's like he's doing good deeds for people.
Yeah.
I didn't see that, but it was barely advertised, and I don't think it came to the cinema.
Because I waited for it, and I'm very sure it didn't. I
don't think it did, and I didn't remember it until. I mean, so Tower Heist was meant to be like a film that was developed for ages. That was meant to have kind of like Chris Tucker and Chris Rock and Cedric the Entertainer and Bernie Mac and Eddie Murphy was meant to be fronting this whole kind of like huge black cast of legendary comedians. Yeah. And then by the end of it, it kind of like, Eddie Murphy's in it, and then you've got like Ben Stiller, and it was just kind of, it was so. I watched it when I was on my own in Lincolnshire on a rainy day, waiting for a gig where I died at, right? But so I don't have best memories of it, but it was such a disappointing, flaccid, boring film. Eddie Murphy was all right in it, but it was kind of like it was. So, and also Dreamgirls, he was great in Dreamgirls, but this was just like he's come back. He's sort of like put Wesley Snipes in it. Wesley Snipes has got this standout, amazing performance in it.
He had amazing cast. Keegan-Michael Key was in it. Mike Epps, Greg Robinson.
Yeah.
It was a really good cast, and it was kind of like his old Eddie Murphy of like bringing his friends in.
Yeah, and it's such a lovely film, and and I love Bowfinger, and I like Ed Wood a lot, and for this film to sort of combine that, because he's so good. Sorry, but he's so good in Bowfinger as well.
Yeah.
Like playing both of those parts, and they don't require like heavy prosthetics. It is just sort of like Eddie Murphy with glasses and teeth, and then Eddie Murphy being Eddie Murphy. But those two performances are so great, and that the little brother or the brother in Bowfinger is such a lovable, sweet character, and it's like a proper acting performance in that. And when you see something like Norbit, and it's kind of like it's all so broad and so sort of offensive, you kind of like go, well, where? It's kind of like you never really know who's going to show up for work when you see it, and it looked like he really, really, really believed in this film, and he really wanted this film to work, and he's so good in it.
I think some of the credit as well goes to Craig Brewer, the director. Who previously directed Empire and Coming to America. He's
directing,
and he's doing.
He's doing the sequel to Coming to America.
Yeah, he's doing the sequel. Sorry, Coming to America. Yeah,
Black Snake Moan as well, didn't he?
Yeah, and also a little Easter egg in there was while I was watching it. There's a scene in the club where the lady's dancing on the stage, and she's doing the same choreography from Coming to America, the big intro. Dance, which I was just like, I had just seen Coming to America, so I was like, those steps are very fresh in my mind. So
that's great.
Yeah, so you can watch out. Didn't have to learn anything new. It was like it's already there.
Well, there are loads of like Easter eggs in the film where they've sort of like folded over lots of They do like scenes that aren't in the original Dolemite but are actually in the sequel, and they do references to some of his later films and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like they've basically gone, right, how do we take this life and figure? And basically you've got the best guys in the business that did it. I mean, they did The People versus Larry Flint, American Crime Story, Big Eyes. So they've done sort of like lots of Man on the Moon. They did lots of kind of biopics, and it's weird. What do you think about it being on Netflix?
Well, that was one of the things I wanted to talk about, because I feel like it didn't get its deserved like attention. I just felt like it was a little bit like shunned, because I don't know, it came out on Netflix and it wasn't really advertised to the fullest as it would be in the cinema. Because for me, it's an amazing film, and I think it's brilliant. The performances in there, the cast is phenomenal. I mean, the costume designer is the same one who won the Oscar for Black Panther, and I feel like
the costumes are great.
They're just brilliant. The set design, and I kind of felt like it was. I love Netflix, but I felt like it was wasted on Netflix. I would have liked to see it on the big screen, and kind of enjoy the comebacks, the relationships on the big screen, personally.
No, I agree. I would say, but what I would say about the quality of the film is, I think a lot of Netflix films, when you start watching them, they feel like a Netflix film, you know? There's a certain quality to the way they're filmed and the way the camera moves, and it sometimes feels a little bit kind of like a 90s studio comedy, you know? There's not like a lot of artistic, sometimes, right? And what I would say about this is, I waited so long. I was so excited about this film coming out.
Yeah.
And when I finally saw it and it started, my initial thought was, oh, it feels a bit Netflix, right? And then I just got completely absorbed in it and lost in it. And I just felt like it's as, I don't think that Netflix films are worse than other films. So, like, The Irishman was a Netflix film, and I think when they first announced that Adam Sandler was going to sign a contract with Netflix and make 6 movies exclusively for Netflix, everyone was just like, "Fucking hell, Adam Sandler's over." But in actual fact, even though a lot of those Netflix films are awful, it sort of pioneered a trail for all of these other filmmakers that can't get cinema releases to suddenly start making these films.
And I kind of feel like when I watch a film on Netflix, my expectations are different to when I go to the cinema to watch something. So if something is okay on Netflix, it will be a good film. Whereas if I go to the cinema and a film is okay, I'm like, well, I've just wasted £12 of my life and time that I'll never get back. Whereas I feel like the expectations are a little bit different when it comes to watching streaming stuff rather than going to the cinema.
But I would say the reverse is true as well, where I've seen some of my favourite films on TV. I've got my phone and I've got emails and texts, and I'm like getting up and getting something to eat, and it's like there's a film basically on in the background, right? And for a film that is premiering on Netflix to fight against all social media, all of the distractions you've got in your house, and for it to be completely absorbing. I can't even say that about, some of my favourite all-time films.
That is very true.
And I think that I switched everything off. I sat down, I watched it for 2 hours like a film, and I did it in my living room, and it's kind of like, and that's great. And one of my favourite films is Once Upon a Time in the West, right? And it's like 3 hours long, and I watch it at home. And you watch it in stages and stuff. But you go to the cinema, you watch it all in one go. It's an incredible film. It rolls over you. And I think that cinema is absolutely the perfect place to watch certain films where you can just watch them from beginning to end without any interruptions. And like I said, for this film to fight against all of that and to still kind of like move you, and I think that I think it's stunning.
Yeah,
and it's about my favourite thing.
Sorry?
And it's about my favourite thing, you know.
Which is
not just films, but kind of like my whole career is based around the fact that no one really gave me. I think that you think that someone's going to give you permission to do something in your life, and I think that you know, I used to write plays. Like I said, no one is asking me to write plays. I wanted to write plays. I can write now better than I could then. But I couldn't write as well as I could now if I hadn't started then.
Yeah.
And I had friends that came to tell me that I should give up and I shouldn't do. I should, you know, it's just kind of like, well, this play was all right, Nick, but if you're still doing this in 5 years' time, you should give up. And you go, well, you're my friend, you know.
Yeah.
Well, not anymore. But do you know what I mean? And so there's all these people that are telling you that you shouldn't follow your dreams and you shouldn't do it. And to watch something like this, where not that it directly inspires me to follow my dreams, but I think it's such a positive message. Yeah, we are brainwashed in this industry or in the world or in life to sort of like not try that thing because it's too difficult, it's too hard, and go down the well-trodden path. And this is a film about a guy that was just like, fuck it, I want to do it. And he did it.
And I think that's what I love about it is in that first 5 minutes when he's talking to Snoop, and Snoop's like, come on, dude, like, we're old, let it go, you know, there's no point. And everyone basically just keeps telling him, you're not good enough or you're not going to make it. And he still perseveres. Like, for me, that's probably why I got a bit emotional, because it's like, I love that. I love seeing people go after their passion or their dreams and fulfilling it and making themselves happy. And it's hard because it will be your friends, your family that will be like, I don't think you can do it. And I think that was real to show that, because you get your biggest discouragement from people who should really be encouraging you and supporting you in doing that. And just because sometimes people don't believe in themselves, they let that onto others, which goes into my next point. If you had to pick a scene to show to someone who hadn't seen Dolemite Is My Name, what scene would it be?
I think, well, like I said, I think the scene at the beginning where is it Queen Bee?
Who, Lady Reed?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, her name's he calls her Queen Bee in the film, but her name's Lady Reed.
So the scene where they meet is great. And then like the scene where Wesley Snipes is directing the fight scene is really funny.
It's so good. It's so good.
And the scene, I mean, like the scene at the end when he comes out with the queue and there's the little kid. I mean, like that's just...
That melted my heart.
Yeah.
At that moment, I think that's when the tears began, to be fair. I was just like...
I think first time was that, maybe. I just think, I mean, but also, it's to say, not that I think... I wouldn't say that Adam Sandler is a guilty pleasure. I do, but I do feel like every time he makes a good film, I'm so happy for him. And I'm so relieved. And I go, yeah, right? Yeah, because I think that he is good. He just doesn't always do good stuff. Mm-hmm. And I think Eddie Murphy is sort of guilty of the same thing, even though they're kind of like in different leagues where...
Yeah, 100, yeah. Totally.
But with Eddie Murphy, it was just kind of like, I just really want this to be good. And it was. And I was so happy for him.
And I think that's why it took me a while to watch it, because I was like, please, Eddie, I need this to be good for both of us right now. Because the expectations are high.
Yeah.
Nick, you have been amazing. And I feel like you and I can talk about movies forever. And I'll definitely have to have you back on here again to talk about another one of your favourite black leads or black films.
Yeah.
But I just want to say thank you and wish you all the best of luck with everything that you do.
Thank you very much. It's lovely to meet you, Rachel.
It's a pleasure to meet you too.
If we've met over Zoom, does that mean that we've really met?
Oh, there you go. I mean, you've seen me. This is...
Does it count? Because I am absolutely being bleached out right now by the light. It's got dark while we were talking. The sun's gone down.
I've just realised, thank God for this light, because otherwise it would have been a whole situation. And I didn't think. But yeah, no, we have met. Well, that's my claim.
I count that then. I count that.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
No, it was honestly my pleasure. I'd love to have you on again.
I'd love to come back. Yeah, it's great.